Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, General Alexander, I appreciate the time we had to spend. I learned a lot in the time that we spent together in your position, and it was very meaningful. And I recall when I was first elected, I came from the House to the Senate. I replaced David Boren. David Boren was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. He told me at that time, he said, you know, one of the problems that we were never able to deal with was the fact that we have all of this technology and all these things that we're finding out, and yet we seem to be competing with ourselves. I mean, you have the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the Homeland, well, they didn't have Homeland Security then. But I'm kind of seeing the same thing that's, well, we made some headway there. In fact, up in Tuzla during the Bosnia thing, it was the first time all of the entities I mentioned were in one room together, at least they were talking. Now, you mentioned in your statement, you said, commercial and private entities cannot afford to defend themselves alone against nation-state attacks or nor nation-state-like attacks in cyberspace, and that the U.S. government is the only one that can and should fire back. Now, it just seems to me that we have that agency. I'd ask you what agency, how this should be restructured, because we have each one of these, like the NSA, they have a cyber division, the CIA and all that. How would you envision, I know you've given some thought to this, restructuring this thing to be more effective?
Well, I'm going to take from what I talked with Secretary Gates about, because I think he had the greatest insights. And when you look at the departments that are responsible for protecting the country in this space, you have Homeland Security, you have Department of Justice, and you have Department of Defense. And practically speaking, all the technical talent really lies at NSA in deep technical expertise in the network. And hence the reason we put Cyber Command there, so you married those two pieces up. FBI has some great talent for domestic capabilities, but they don't have any of the deep technical talent that came out of World War II for encryption, decryption, and the things that really help the network operate. So when you talk about network operations, that's probably the best expertise. So I think as you look at it, the question then becomes, what do you do that brings those three departments together? And he looked at a third hat, and I would ask you to reach out to him and get his thoughts on it. I know he's testified once, but he had some great insights, and I think directly from him on that was probably the best approach. And we actually started down that road, and it fell apart at one point. But I think that's where our country needs to get to, because that allows you to look at what you're going to do to defend the nation and what you're going to do to recover when bad things happen. And both of those have to be synchronized as we go forward. Specifically, it goes back to what Senator Reid brought out. If our nation is attacked and they take down the power grid and they do massive damage, where's your first priority for the future of the nation? Is something that has to be, well, how am I going to defend this country, is first and foremost has to be put on the table. So those kind of decisions have to be made, and I think that's what I would do. I'm not sure, I have not been able to think of a way of collapsing all the intel agencies together unless you just smashed them all together under the DNI and then made sub-agencies, but you're actually back to where you are today. So I don't know a better way right off the top of my head to do that, Senator.
Well, I was going to bring up the effort that you made in that position, like going out to the University of Tulsa and working with, and they developed a great program there. We, as Dr. Singer mentioned, we have to watch what the Chinese and others are doing, the emphasis they're putting on, they're teaching their kids. I look down the road and think, you know, are they passing this up everywhere? Let me just real quickly get back to the fact that the statement that was made by Bob Gates talking about how we've never once gotten it right. I can remember when the last year I served on the House Armed Services Committee was 1994. I recall when we had experts testifying, and one of them said that in 10 years we will no longer need ground troops. Well, that's kind of an example of what's out there in a reality that we haven't been getting it right. But one thing that I think that Bob Gates got right was when he was on the panel. Incidentally, we've had great panels the last 3 weeks and up to and including this panel of experts. We have the people in think tanks. We also had the 5 professors from different universities. But we had them all responding to the fact that Bob Gates stated that in 1961, we spent, defending America consumed 51% of our budget. Today, it's 15% of our budget. In all the problems that you're addressing and that you've been talking about, and I would ask all of this question, are we not giving the right emphasis to defending America? Right now, with sequestration coming on, they're insisting on having an equal amount of money affecting the social programs as defending America. So do you think that we need to, you can just say yes or no right down the table, to reprioritize making defending America number one priority again? Dr. Singer?
Sequestration is incredibly unstrategic, but it's akin to shooting yourself in the foot, not shooting yourself in the head. So how we deal with it will determine success or failure.
I think that's yes. Mr. Scharre?
Thank you, Senator. I mean, I acknowledge there are some very difficult domestic political compromises here, but I think it's very clear that we certainly are not spending enough on defense today in order to defend the country adequately.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.